Hello and welcome to the Dinosaw number 251, another 7 curious, interesting things I saw last week. So as ever, before we do, a little bit of hygiene. If you haven't subscribed, you might want to, because YouTube have changed their algorithm. And unfortunately, I seem to be in the middle of that because I look like AI. They don't really like things that are repetitive, that have the same title each week, and also have a slideshow format. And that's exactly what the Dinosaw is. So if you haven't subscribed, you might want to do that. Otherwise, you might not see me again. However, the first thing is MetaTribe 2. This is really interesting. So this is a model, an AI model, of course, that can predict brain activity. So they've taken a load of MRI scans, or fMRI scans to be accurate, and what they've done is they've then learnt what that does. So an input can now be predicted on the brain activity. What you're seeing on the right hand side, for instance, is an actual brain activity of somebody doing something, looking at something, thinking something, and below it you're seeing what the predicted brain activity would be, and it's pretty close. So on the left hand side you can see actually the model. You can go and have a play on the website, and for instance, if there was some language or somebody looking at a face, this is what would light up in the brain. Likewise, if you're looking at certain videos, for instance, then your brain would light up in a certain way. So you're thinking, why would this be useful? If you work in advertising, for instance, you may have an advert and you want the person who's going to see the advert to think a certain thing, or at least behave in a certain way. They want to love your advert, they want to hate your advert, they want to be curious. Maybe you just want to know whether it's been embedded in the mind, or they want to think about it. So if you don't see the activity that you want to see from your advert because you've fed it into this model, you can maybe go back and edit your advert until you get the brain activity you want. Now, of course, this is meta, so make of that what you will, but this is an open model, so you can download it. If you are going to use it for business, you're not allowed for commercial reasons. So there you go, but you can download this, and this is available for you to play with. Somebody's also figured out how to use it for that kind of advertising optimization thing. Watch this space. This is pRuview. This has existed before, but it's been kind of nerdy and been kind of scientific, really. So what this is inferring positions of actual things in spaces, i.e. rooms, using Wi-Fi. So your Wi-Fi is pinging around your room, and let's say at rest, it creates a signature. So it bounces off all the rooms and it comes to rest, and certain parts of your house will have certain Wi-Fi signals. However, if somebody then walks into one of those rooms, it disrupts those Wi-Fi signals, and you can detect that. Now, you can detect that with just a very few Wi-Fi signals. For instance, if you've got a router and maybe 2 routers, or maybe you're pinging another device, then that can triangulate your position. So what this can do, and it's, by the way, downloadable now, so it's not in the realms of research and nerdiness. You can actually download this from GitHub. It can do things like pose estimation, so it knows whether you're standing up, lying down, or sitting, for instance. It can also do breath detection. It can take your heartbeat, and it can also, because Wi-Fi can go through walls, it can go through walls. So if you're in the surveillance world, then this has also been the holy grail. But likewise, if you're in the medical world and you need to know whether somebody's fallen over remotely, then maybe this is something you can do that with. Now, this has been around for a while, so that's just been a thing, but now you can download it yourself. So the industrial cat is out of the domestic bag, if that makes any sense. This is Fyous. This is really interesting. This is a 3-dimensional dynamic molding technique. So it uses lots of pins, so a bit like one of those devices where you put your face through it and all the pins come out. It uses those to create this kind of dynamic mold. So it means you can then squirt stuff into the mold, you can then change the pins and create a different thing. So in this case, for instance, if you're doing a shoe last, that's what that's called, then for instance, you can make one shoe, and then you can then just change the pin slightly and just change all the different shoe lasts just using the same molding technique. What you can also do is you can change the pins halfway through the mold. So maybe you change, you maybe do the base, and then you sort of change the pins out, and then you can squirt in the sole and whatever you want to do. So very, very interesting. So yeah, 3D printing is not the answer to everything, and this is a very good thing. So that's polymorphic molding, which is a great phrase. This is LTX Desktop. This is me asking for a superhero hamster to fall out of the sky in a sort of Marvel-esque way, and this is what it created. Now, why is this interesting? This is interesting because this was totally on my desktop. Well, kinda. I'll explain that. So this is LTX Desktop. It uses a model that you download. Now, because you download it to your desktop, and it can do this on your desktop. You don't incur any costs, and also it doesn't use the internet and nobody else is snooping on what you're doing. So that's very interesting. Also kind of creepy if you want to use it like that. It can also generate music, it can generate images as well. So all that good stuff you're seeing from the big models, then LTX 2.3 can do that as well. It does take about 1.5 GB of download. If you're on a Windows machine, yeah, it's all you can pull out your internet and you can then generate images on your desktop. However, if you're on a Mac, you do actually need an API key, and it all goes through an API. So, however, you know, this is me doing it, didn't incur any costs, didn't go off my machine particularly. There you go. So interesting, you can do that too. This is Phomi, and this is their Edisplay. Now, yes, this looks like a back projected display, but it's better than that. This is actually a solid stone wall that is also a display. So I'll explain that. So what they do is they reconstitute materials to create really interesting surfaces, and, you know, reconstituted stone essentially. So they'll do marble, they'll do all sorts of things. However, this has got tiny little microscopic holes in it, which then allow the LED screen behind it to shine through. So when you want it to be a stone wall, it's a stone wall. When you want it to be a screen, it's a screen. So really interesting. You know, not all screens need to look like Vegas or glitzy and glamorous. This can actually be very subtle. So, you know, imagine this in your house. You know, you might have underfloor heating. Maybe you also have behind wall lighting, which is really interesting. You know, your table, that sort of thing. Very interesting. I think they have distributors around the world as well, but this is from their Chinese holding company, which is Phomi. There you go. This is ChromoLCD. And this builds on some previous research by MIT, and this is Yuni Zhu, and she has created essentially a device that can actually activate what's called programmatic images. So I'll explain this. So there is an invisible spray, a surface spray, which is sort of like an ink that you can spray on items, and then you can then pull out an image from it. You can then essentially set it, a bit like making a photograph in a surface, but using this device. So what that does is you have an item, you can then essentially program the surface. What does it look like? And it can be color as well, which is excellent. So, you know, yes, you can use it for fashion. You can make your bag have different patterns on it, all that sort of good stuff. But imagine it in manufacturing as well. So if you have an item going through a conveyor belt system, which has a QR code on it to identify it, as soon as it's gone through one station, you can then erase the pattern and you can change another one. So really interesting, whether, you know, imagine you have a car, for instance, you can have a design on your car, and as soon as you want to change it, you can do. There you go. This is Cosine.club, and finally, now last week we had you know, find videos that look like this video or phrases in stuff. So there's another one for music as well. So this actually uses discogs.com as its database. What it tries to do is find music that is less traveled, that sounds a bit like the kind of the hits that you might know, the big ones on Spotify. So what you do is you find what you want. Like in this case, I put in Grooves in the Heart by D-Light. I'm not going to play it, obviously, because I'll get a copyright strike. And it then gives you a percentage sort of similarity to Grooves in the Heart by D-Light. So as you can see, again, I'm not going to play them, but they were actually quite close. They are interesting. So there you go. So if you're looking for something that has the same vibe or the same groove as a piece of music, now you can. It uses deep learning. Of course it does. So there you go. Hopefully that was interesting. As I said, if you're not subscribed, you might want to. Otherwise, you might not ever see me again. But other than that, I will see you next week.